Welcome to Domain 5 video of the CISSP practice questions and answers. In today's video, we'll be discussing some of the practical questions that you might encounter when you're taking the exam. So without wasting further time, let's dive right in. Question 1. St. Mary's Healthcare is implementing a new identity and access management system to secure sensitive patient data and comply with healthcare privacy regulations. They have a diverse workforce, including doctors, nurses, IT personnel, and administrative staff. Which of the following IAM components is most essential for ensuring that only authorized individuals can access patient records? A. Identify federation. B. Role-based access control. C. Biometric authentication. D. Password policies. The answer here to ensure that only authorized individuals can access patient records will be option B. The role-based access control is essential in a healthcare setting because it ensures that all access to patient records are granted based on the specific roles and responsibility of the workforce, like the nurses, doctors, IT personnel. This approach minimizes the risk of unauthorized access by limiting the data access to only those individuals that need it to perform their job functions. So this thereby enhances the security and ensures compliance with healthcare privacy regulations. Question 2. Which type of access control model is used in environments where information classification and confidentiality is of ultimate value, such as government offices and military organizations? A. DAC. B. RBAC. C. MAC. D. RBAC. Now, when you hear of access control that has to do with government offices and military organizations, the first option that should come to mind is option C, the mandatory access control. This type of access control is used where access to resources is governed by a central authority based on the sensitivity of the information and the clearance level of the users. So this model is often used in environments where security is paramount, like the military and the government institutions. They place confidentiality at the height of everything. Question 3. In a cloud computing environment, which of the following is the most critical factor for ensuring data security and privacy? A. Service level agreements with the cloud provider. B. Regular security audits and assessments. C. Services provided by the cloud provider. D. Strong access controls and authentication. Now, access controls, in this case, one will read the question. The most critical factor to ensure that data is secure and private in a cloud computing environment will be strong access controls and authentication. That is option D. The other options we have here: service level agreements with the cloud provider, regular security audits, and services provided by the cloud provider. They are important for securing data in the cloud environments. However, the most critical factor to be considered is strong access controls and authentication. So even with encryption, if an unauthorized user gains access, then that data is vulnerable. So we're going with option D. The access controls and authentication are fundamental to protecting data, and it does this by ensuring that only authorized users can access sensitive data. Without these strong access controls and authentication, data is vulnerable to breaches, potential misuse as well as unauthorized access. Now, this access controls and authentication involves the use of multi-factor authentication, role-based access controls, and robust password policies to ensure proper identity management. Question 4. ABC Corporation, a multinational financial institution, is planning to implement a robust identity and access management system to enhance security and compliance. They have identified a need for strong authentication methods to protect sensitive financial data. Which of the following methods is most suitable for their needs? A. Smart cards. B. Username and password. C. Single sign-on. D. Knowledge-based authentication, or KBA. The most suitable method for this financial institution in order to implement a robust identity and access management to enhance security and compliance would be the use of option A, the smart cards. Using just a username and password is susceptible to brute force attack. The user can be a victim of social engineering, and also by being a victim of social engineering, their information can be accessed by the time they compromise their credentials. So we're going with smart cards. The smart cards provide a strong form of authentication by requiring both something the user has and something the user knows. So this is a form of two-factor authentication, and it is more secure than relying only on usernames and password or knowledge-based authentication. Question 5. Which of the following security controls is most effective in preventing a privilege escalation attack? A. Security information and event management. B. Antivirus software. C. Network intrusion detection system. D. Role-based access control. In this, the correct answer would be option D. The role-based access control would be the most effective in preventing a privilege escalation attack. The role-based access control is a method that restricts system access based on the roles or functions of users rather than the individual users themselves. It ensures that users only have access to the resources and privileges that are necessary to perform their assigned tasks or roles. Question 6. Which access control model manages access based on sensitivity and clearance? A. RBAC. B. DAC. C. MAC. D. RBAC. And this will be going with option C, the mandatory access control. This type of access control, like we've earlier stated, is used where access to resources is governed by a central authority based on the sensitivity of the information and the clearance level of the users. This model is used in a situation where security is paramount, like government institutions and the military. So it uses sensitivity labels, ensuring that every piece of information is assigned a label such as confidential, secret, or top secret. It also uses clearance levels, ensuring that users are assigned clearance levels that determine the highest level of sensitivity they are allowed to access. For instance, a user with a secret clearance level can only access information labeled as secret, but will not be able to access any information labeled as top secrets. The mandatory access control also makes use of access decisions. So access to resources is controlled based on comparing the user's clearance level with the sensitivity label of the information. So if the user's clearance level meets or exceeds the sensitivity label of that information, then access is granted. Otherwise, it is denied. Question 7. A global technology company has implemented a single sign-on solution using security assertion markup language to enhance security and streamline user access to various cloud-based applications. Which of the following about SAML is correct? A. SAML assertions are transmitted to the identity provider during logouts. B. SAML is an authentication protocol that validates user identities. C. SAML allows applications to store user credentials for authentication. D. SAML is primarily used for data encryption during data transmission. The correct answer here would be option B, and I will give a brief explanation. The SAML is an authentication protocol that validates user identities. It makes use of SAML assertions, which are XML-based statements that conveys authentication information and authorization decisions. They are typically transmitted from the identity provider to the service provider to assert that a user has been authenticated. SAML is also used to facilitate single sign-on by allowing the identity provider to authenticate the users and then asserting their identity to service providers. So this eliminates the need for users to log in separately on each application. Thirdly, SAML allows applications to store the user credentials. So it provides a way for authentication to be handled by a centralized IDP or identity provider. So that's why we're going with option B. It is used for single sign-on implementations to facilitate secure identity verification across different services and applications. So it allows the identity provider to authenticate the users and then pass assertions to the service provider, which trusts the IDP's authentication. Question 8. Which of the following is a primary function of the public key infrastructure? A. Digital signatures. B. Symmetric encryption. C. Hashing. D. Access control. So in this question, we are talking about the public key infrastructure. Public key has to do with digital signatures. We'll be going with option A because the PKI or public key infrastructure is about establishing a secure method for exchanging information through the use of digital certificates and public-private key pairs, with the digital signatures being a core application. So for the other options, symmetric encryption is not a primary function of PKI. PKI is based on asymmetric encryption, not the symmetric encryption. Remember, for symmetric encryption, it's a single key that is used. For the option C, hashing is used in conjunction with digital signatures and certificates, but it is not a primary function of the PKI itself. For option D, access control, PKI supports secure connections and identity verification, which can be a component of access control system, but the access control itself is not a primary function of the public key infrastructure. So that's why we're going with option A. A primary function of the public key infrastructure is to provide a framework for managing digital certificates and ensuring secure communication through the use of digital signatures. These digital signatures are used to verify the authenticity and integrity of electronic documents or messages by ensuring that they have not been tampered with during transmission. Question 9. Which cryptographic protocol is commonly used for securely transmitting credit card information over the internet for online purchases? Option A, SSH, B, HTTPS, C, IPsec, D, SNMP. Now I'll explain each of the options and then we'll choose the correct answer. SSH is used for securely accessing and managing network devices. It is used for secure command line access and data transfer between computers. However, it is not used for transmitting credit card information during online purchases. It's only used for securely accessing and managing network devices. HTTPS is a secure version of HTTP, which is a protocol used for communication between web browsers and websites. Now, the HTTPS, which is the more secure version, encrypts data that is exchanged between the web browser and the website, thereby providing confidentiality and integrity of sensitive information. Option C, the IPsec, is used for securing Internet Protocol communication by authenticating and encrypting each IP packet in a communication session. It is commonly used in VPNs, but not specifically for online purchases. SNMP is used for network management and monitoring and not for transmitting information or securing online transactions. So from these explanations, it's obvious that the answer is option B. The HTTPS is used for secure communication over the internet. It uses SSL TLS protocols to encrypt data, making it the standard choice for securely transmitting sensitive information like credit card details during online transactions. Question 10. In which access control model are policies expressed in terms of attributes? A, MAC, B, DAC, C, RBAC, D, ABAC. In this, we already know that the MAC is used based on sensitivity labels and clearance levels. The DAC, or discretionary access control, is based on the discretion of the owner of the objects, and the owner decides who is allowed access to their resources. RBAC, or rule-based access control, is controlled based on a set of rules that is defined by the system administrator. ABAC, or attributes-based access control, is determined based on attributes of the users, the resources, and the environment. So in this case, the correct answer will be option D. The access control models in which policies are expressed in terms of attributes is the attributes-based access control. So this model allows for a more dynamic access control decision based on multiple factors or attributes, and this provides greater flexibility and scalability compared to the other control models. A security analyst observes multiple unauthorized data extraction attempts from a database server. Upon investigation, all the extraction attempts have been traced back to a single user account. Which of the following should be the analyst's immediate action? A. Isolate or disable the account and initiate an incident response. B. Implement stricter access controls on the database server. C. Delete the user account. D. Notify the user about suspicious activity. So in this scenario, the security analyst has noticed some unauthorized attempts to extract data from a database server. So following the incident response plan, the first thing is to isolate that incident. So we'll be going with option A. but I'll also give a brief explanation of the other options. The reason why the analyst's first action should be to isolate is to ensure that the account stops the unauthorized data extraction attempts and prevents any further potential damage. Then, the next step will be to initiate an incident response. Initiating an incident response will allow for a thorough investigation to determine the extent of the breach, how it occurred, and what measures needs to be taken to prevent future incidents. For the second option, this is a good long-term measure, implementing stricter controls, but this will not stop the ongoing unauthorized activity immediately. The question says, which of the following should be the analyst's immediate action? Option C is like a remediation step after the investigation. You can't delete the account because you need to investigate to know the extent of the breach that has occurred. So if you delete the account, you've removed any critical evidence that is needed for the investigation. Option D, notifying the user, is not an immediate priority, and it could alert the malicious actor or the hacker if the account has been compromised. This will be a case of tipping off the hacker. So that's obviously is not the correct answer. The correct answer is option A, isolating or disabling the accounts and then initiating an incident response plan. Question 12. ABC Corporation, with offices across multiple countries, just implemented a centralized identity and access management system to manage user access more efficiently. As a part of this implementation, they need to consider the concept of role-based access control. Which of the following statement best describes RBAC in the context of IAM, that's Identity and Access Management? Option A, RBAC focuses on authenticating users using multi-factor authentication. B, RBAC grants access based on the user's physical location within the organization. C, RBAC assigns access rights based on a user's job function and responsibilities. D, RBAC is primarily concerned with monitoring user activity and generating audit logs. The question here is that we are looking for the best statement that describes RBAC in the context of IAM. And if we go through the options, the answer should already be obvious. That will be option C. RBAC, or role-based access control, is a method of regulating access to a computer or network resources based on the roles of the individual users within the organization. The users are assigned access permissions based on their specific roles rather than the individuals themselves. So, when they are assigned these roles, it allows them to inherit the access permissions that are associated with the roles. This approach helps in managing and enforcing the access policies more effectively by ensuring that access rights are aligned with job functions and responsibilities. Question 13. FK Corporation, a large financial institution, is considering implementing the Kerberos authentication protocol for securing access to its internal network and sensitive financial systems. Which of the following statements about Kerberos is correct? A, Kerberos is primarily used for encrypting data at rest. B, Kerberos requires a centralized key distribution center for authentication. C, Kerberos is vulnerable to replay attacks due to absence of timestamps. D, Kerberos uses public key cryptography for user authentication. The correct answer here would be option B. The centralized key distribution center in this context, the Kerberos relies on it to manage and distribute secret keys securely. The key distribution center plays a crucial role in the authentication process by ensuring that tickets issued allow users access to various services within the network. Kerberos is an authentication protocol that manages and distributes secret keys to users and services within the network. It basically consists of two main components, which is the authentication server and the ticket granting server. This centralization helps to manage and verify identities in the network environment. So that's why we are going with option B. Question 14. Which access control model has very limited user functionality, requires a lot of administrative overhead, are extremely expensive, and are not user-friendly? A. MAC. B. RBAC. C. DAC. D. RBAC. The answer here is option A. MAC, or Mandatory Access Control, enforces strict access controls based on information sensitivity and user clearance levels. It is highly secure, but it can be cumbersome to manage and inflexible because it requires significant administrative overhead. This model is used in the military and in government organizations, and is usually not user-friendly or flexible like the other models like the RBAC or the DAC. So the MAC is extremely expensive, it is not user-friendly, it requires a lot of administrative overhead, and it has very limited user functionality. Question 15. XYZ Healthcare is implementing a new identity and access management system to manage user access to their sensitive patient data and medical records. They want to ensure that their identity and access provisioning lifecycle aligns with best practices. Which of the following stages in the provisioning lifecycle is responsible for granting access to users based on their roles and responsibilities? A. Request. B. Approval. C. Provisioning. D. Reconciliation. I'll give a brief explanation of the different stages of the provisioning lifecycle. The request stage is the beginning, where submission of requests for access to systems or resources are made. The users or their managers can request access based on their needs. The second level is approval. In this stage, the requests are reviewed and approvals are granted, and this often includes validation by the managers or system owners to ensure that the request is legitimate and necessary. The third stage, provisioning, involves the actual granting of access rights to users. So based on their roles and responsibilities, the users are given access to the necessary resources and systems. It is in this implementation phase where access rights are assigned. The last stage, reconciliation, involves auditing and validating of access rights to ensure that they are accurate and up to date. This stage checks that the provisioned access matches the approved access, and it helps to identify any discrepancies or unauthorized access. So based on this scenario, the level where access is granted to users based on their roles and responsibility is in the provisioning stage, option C. It is at this stage that the access rights are granted to users based on their roles and responsibilities within the organization. So this ensures that the users have the necessary permissions to perform their job function while maintaining security and compliance with regulations. In this case, it's healthcare, so it ensures that their abiding by the regulations of HIPAA in the case of the healthcare organization. Question 16. Which access control model simplifies access control administration by allowing permissions to be managed in terms of user job roles? A. DAC, B. RBAC, C. MAC, D. RBAC. Based on the question highlights job roles, so in this case it will be option B, the role-based access control. It assigns permissions to roles rather than to individual users. So users are assigned the roles, and this simplifies the management of permissions, especially in a large organization. Rights are assigned to designers, rights are assigned to secretaries, rights are assigned to the analysts, so the access rights are assigned based on the job role and not necessarily on the individual themselves. Question 17. FK Essentials, a leading e-commerce company, is concerned about the security of its customers and online payment system. They want to proactively identify and address vulnerabilities in their systems. Which of the following statements about vulnerability assessment is correct? A. Vulnerability assessment focuses solely on exploiting vulnerabilities to access the impacts. B. Vulnerability assessment is a one-time process and does not need to be performed regularly. C. Vulnerability assessment typically includes both automated and manual testing. D. Vulnerability assessment provides a guarantee of complete security against threats. The answer here is option C. Vulnerability assessment includes both automated and manual testing, and it's because a comprehensive vulnerability assessment has to be done, and this usually involves both the automated tools, which scans for known vulnerabilities and misconfiguration, as well as the manual testing, which can identify complex issues that the automated tools might have missed. For option A, vulnerability assessment is about identifying and assessing vulnerabilities, not necessarily exploiting them. The exploitation of vulnerabilities is part of penetration testing. So in this scenario, that is not the case. For option B, vulnerability assessment is definitely not a one-time process. It should be something that is performed regularly, because every day new vulnerabilities are constantly being discovered and the system configuration changes over time. So it is necessary to have this assessment done regularly in order to maintain security. For option D, vulnerability assessment does not guarantee complete security. There is no vulnerability assessment that can provide a guarantee of complete security against all threats. It only identifies and helps to address the known vulnerabilities, but every day new threats emerge, and especially the zero-day vulnerabilities, which can emerge at any time. So the correct answer here is option C. That is the statement that is correct about the vulnerability assessment. It includes both automated and manual testing. Question 18. In which RBAC type access control are users mapped to various roles and mapped straight to other types of applications that do not have role-based access functionality? A. Full RBAC, B. Limited RBAC, C. Hybrid RBAC, D. Non-RBAC. The answer here is option C. In a hybrid RBAC system, the users are mapped to various roles, but they are also mapped directly to other types of applications that do not have the built-in role-based access control functionality. This allows the organization to leverage the RBAC principle across a range of applications, even those that do not inherently support RBAC. So that's why the correct answer here is the hybrid RBAC. Question 19. Which of the following is not a commonly used authentication protocol? A. Kerberos. B. OAuth. C. LDAP. D. SSL TLS. The Kerberos is a network authentication protocol that is used to verify the identity of users or services in a network environment. Now remember, the question says which of these is not a commonly used authentication protocol. Kerberos is commonly used because it is used to identify the Kerberos is a commonly used authentication protocol because it's used to verify the identity of users. The OAuth is an authorization framework used for delegating access to resources on behalf of a user without sharing their details. So this is a commonly used protocol. The Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP, is a protocol used for accessing and maintaining directory services. So it is a commonly used authentication protocol because it is used in services like the Active Directory. The SSL and TLS are cryptographic protocols that are used to secure communication over a network, typically between a client and a user. So this authentication protocol is only used in securing data in transit, but it is not an authentication protocol. So our answer here is option D. The SSL is used to secure data in transit, so it only provides encryption and data integrity mechanisms to ensure secure communication, but it does not handle any user authentication directly. So it is not a commonly used authentication protocol. Question 20. Which of the following is a characteristic of single sign-on? A. Requires users to authenticate multiple times. B. Centralizes user authentication. C. Provides separate credentials for each application. D. Increases administrative overhead. The answer here is option B. The single sign-on is a mechanism that allows users to authenticate once, and with that they can gain access to multiple applications or systems without the need to authenticate again for each application. It centralizes user authentication and provides a seamless and convenient user experience while reducing the need for the users to manage multiple sets of credentials. So once they are logged in and authenticated on one system, they will be able to have access to their resources on other systems without the need to get authenticated again. So this enhances security as well as efficiency within an organization's IT environment. This brings us to the end of Domain 5 for the CISSP practice questions. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and also drop a comment if you found this video useful and helpful during your preparation for the certification exam. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.